Thank you to everybody for coming today. We did this back in July when it was warm, but yet we were still all huddled in our basements or wherever. So we wanted to do it again this year, or at the end of the year, as we had promised. And today I'm really excited that we're going to have two speakers, Karen Horting of the Society of Women Engineers and Thom Duncan and Laima of the American Board of Medical Specialties. They're both going to share a bit about some of their events this year on how they went and what they did and some learnings. They're really good stories, and I thought it was a great way to sort of enter 2021 with some inspiration and some positivity for the year. So we'll look forward to that. We'll do the two sessions. They're about 15 minutes each, roughly. We'll entertain questions and answers after each session. You can do that, of course, if you have a question during. Feel free to raise a hand or throw a comment in the chat bar. Crystal is monitoring those. And then depending on time and availability, we'll do a brief sort of whiteboarding exercise on what we're all looking forward to 2021. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to turn the presentation over to Karen Horting. Karen Horting is the Executive Director of the Society of Women Engineers. A longtime client with us, and they had a wonderful event this year, and she is going to talk us through it. And there you go, Karen.
Great, thanks, Ron. And I know I have a few folks that are on my team on the call, so feel free to jump in on anything here if I'm leaving something critical out. So yeah, so we made the pivot to all virtual probably early summer, where my first emotion was panic. Then we did the event. It was very successful, and you feel relief. And then now I'm starting to feel panic again as we think about 21 and how do we do this in a hybrid environment if that's where we are. So I'm not sure what the whiteboarding for 21 is, Ron, but I think for those that are thinking some face-to-face and some virtual, it would be great to talk about that. So a little bit about our conference event first. So our theme this year was Practice Curiosity. We set that theme almost a year in advance, but who knew that curiosity and pivoting and changing was going to be so vital to us this year. This is our big showcase event for the Society, really all about professional development, networking, recognizing all of our award recipients, and then a huge career fair. This is where many women in engineering find not only their first internship or job, but as they move through the career path, how they find future employers. Just to kind of set the stage, our 2019 event was in Anaheim. We had a little over 16,000 attendees at that event. I think our career fair had over 400 exhibitors. So big event, 2 banquets on Friday and Saturday night, 1,200 plus people. First couple of days are leadership meetings, some of the VIP events, and then everything kicks off on Thursday morning with the first keynote and then doesn't wrap up till Saturday night. So 200 plus workshops, panels, mega sessions, that sort of thing. So a jam-packed week. So how did we do with our virtual event? It was our biggest ever, close to 19,000 participants. I think about 1,200 of those were global. So we definitely increased our global participation. I think in Anaheim, we'd been a couple hundred global participants. So definitely saw that grow. Our membership is about 50% collegiate, 50% working professional. And so you'll see our attendance for the conference probably shook out close to 50-50 as we've ever had. And then you'll see there about 3,000 recruiters and exhibitors who were part of this as well. And they did have full access as well, because many times the people that are doing the recruiting are actually engineering managers and women that are working in engineering and technology for their respective employers. lot of engagement on social media, which is not really anything new for us. We always have a pretty engaged membership in terms of social media. But you'll see the keynote speakers, which were semi-live events, great attendance there. We did a virtual awards hall this year to replace those 2 live banquets. And when this was done, we had over 7,500 visits, but we're over 8,000 visits now from 34 countries. And over, I think, 3,400 notes of congratulations. So this is where we showcased all of our award recipients. We actually sent them the awards ahead of time, asked them to take a photo with the award. For some of our awards where they actually get to make remarks at these events, we got pre-recorded videos from them. And then the marketing team from DJG built this awards hall, and it's still open. We're keeping it open, and it's been a great way to recognize our award recipients. And from our volunteer leaders to the award recipients themselves, it's been nothing but positive feedback. Okay, let me move on here. So how about the attendee response? Lots of enthusiasm, strong dialogue in the chat. It was kind of a game time decision on having the chat open for attendees versus just kind of the Q&A feature, because the chat, it's just open dialogue, right? You can't really control it, but we're glad we did, because I mean, just seeing the enthusiasm and people asking questions and other attendees jumping in to answer and providing best practices and that, and just everybody, even just at the beginning, sharing where they were logging in from, was really great to see. And it was just any session that I went to and was a part of, we just saw great engagement, which was kind of our biggest concern. Would we have that attendee engagement? And we definitely did, but we did a number of things to build that. Virtual photo booth was huge. People were sharing their photos on social media, emailing them to each other, taking photos from previous years, and using them in the photo booth. So people that they couldn't actually be with live, they were able to use the virtual photo booth to kind of engage with each other. We did networking lounges around different topics and for different communities. We did a scavenger hunt. We did online bingo. There you'll see a snapshot of that. We did an online trivia contest as we were building up to the event. Then we had a leaderboard for the different contests and things. And we built that into our daily emails too, so people could see who the leaders were at any point in time during the event. Approach to programming. So normally, as I mentioned, our conference is about a week, and with the bulk of the content being over 3 days. But we were really worried about attendee fatigue and sitting in front of your computer for that amount of time. So we expanded it from 1 week to 3. And I think that was great for attendees, but it really fatigued the staff. And I think it really put more stress on our team that we really needed to, because we are providing access to the content for a year. So I think going forward, we would look at week 1, we would keep, like we did for our leadership meetings, some of the VIP receptions and kind of things that we kept as evening events as they normally were, like our Life Members event and our Past Presidents event, and then really just have that second week be all the content, because we did a mix of pre-recorded, live, and semi-live, and again, with access for a year. I think we needlessly stretched it out. Attendees can still participate at their own pace. Anything that was live or semi-live by that night was uploaded as into the on-demand part of the platform. So I would say, I think it's okay to keep it in whatever time frame your attendees are used to. because I do think that that added a level for the team of making it a little bit more stressful. In terms of marketing, so we definitely did more communications than normal. We piloted some employer bulk registration options that were really successful, because at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure we had enough attendance. We built our budget around 7,500 attendees, and as you saw, we had close to 19,000. So from that perspective, hugely successful. And then pre-event we did some micro surveys. So on our We20 website, we started asking about, do you know it's gone virtual? What are you looking forward to? What sessions are you most interested in? And that kind of helped us understand, what did people already know? What were they looking forward to? And then that helped us shape what our messages were and what content we featured. So if there were things it seemed like people didn't know about, we made sure that we kind of stepped it up and highlighted those aspects so that we weren't being repetitive. Technical aspects, I would say for attendees, it was pretty smooth. We did have a help desk that was manned by the platform staff, but we also had staff and volunteers that were monitoring things. I would say from a staff time and coordination, it was pretty time intensive, making sure they kept their commitments. There were a lot of things we heard in the beginning as we were signing on with them that as we got closer to the event, we really had to step up, communicating with them. And of course, yes, outside the US doesn't really always mean yes. And so we, for our project manager and the folks that were supporting that aspect of it, I think they had a few sleepless nights, making sure that, things went off as planned. But I think from an attendee experience, and certainly what I experienced when I was in as an attendee, was pretty smooth. And I think for most people, once they got in the first time and sort of figured out how you navigated through, it was pretty smooth. One thing that I think is critical is having a dedicated project manager. And I would say, think outside your normal team. So outside the conference team or IT staff. In our case, it ended up to be one of our strategic partnerships team members. And I would say organizational skills are key and nerves of steel. So who's going to be able to deal with all the internal questions and get those organized and to the vendor, as well as working with partners and exhibitors and things. And we had the perfect person who would not have come to the top of my list had not one of my team members said, hey, I think Monica would be great for this. And she was. So, but you have to have one person that's the go-to on both sides. And then from a technical aspect, this was something that DJG recommended to me, and it made a huge difference. So for the keynotes, where we were going from recorded content to a keynote who may have been live, who may have been pre-recorded, and then to live Q&A. I mean, it felt like you were watching, CNN or MSNBC. I mean, it was just so smooth. And that was because we engaged with a virtual meeting producer. We worked with a production studio, and then it was just that behind the scenes communication where, I think the fact that we did a lot of pre-scripting and pre-recording of things, but just the fact that it felt seamless. And even though a lot of things had been pre-recorded, weeks before the event, the way the scripting was done, it felt like it was day of. And so, and it wasn't a huge investment. So I would say, having people who have experience in this was well worth it, and made it just such a seamless experience. And here you'll see some shots. So this is on the left, that's at our headquarters with our suite president, pre-recording a lot of her remarks. We also hired an MC. And so in all the pre-recording and then for the Q&A, it was somebody to share the load with her. But we also, we took photos of her for each day and what she was wearing. So then on the day of, she wore the same thing, and people were like, members were on social media like, wow, Heather, how did you coordinate all this? And, then she was posting the pictures of her holding, Wednesday with the date and what she was wearing. And so I think just that pre-planning and that pre-scripting and really thinking about what do you want it to be like on that day made a huge difference. Shift in staff roles. So everybody on the team was pressed into service. I think everybody rose to the challenge. For some folks, it was really outside their comfort zone to open up some of the things like the semi-live sessions and to greet everybody and to manage the Q&A. But we did a lot of training beforehand. We made sure that, the way things were scheduled, nobody was overloaded on any one particular day. We had a first in line and then a second in line if something should happen, that there was always kind of a backup plan and sort of that double secret plan if anything happens. And then I would say key takeaways, there's no one perfect platform. We felt like we had to have one platform that did everything. So, that it was great for the content, that it was good for the networking. And then, as I said, our career fair is kind of the centerpiece of all of this. And I think now, that we've got one under our belt, it's like, we could have found something different for the career fair, but, we lived and learned and it worked. Could it have flowed better and been a little bit better experience for the exhibitor? Probably. But again, I would say, don't think that there's the perfect solution because there probably isn't. It's going to take more staff time, even though you're not physically having to go there and run it. The lead up to the event, I would say, is where it's going to take a lot more time. The sooner you can start planning and executing, the better. For us, we got to pull the trigger because we got to start planning. Yeah, they'll tell you 8 weeks, but really, if you want to do it right, you're going to need more than that. And then this was key for us. Identify the top 3 goals when you're selecting a platform. So, yep, you do a million things at your event, but what are the top 3? And for us, it came down to the professional development content, the networking, and the career fair. And so we said, all right, as we were evaluating the platforms, we were measuring them against those 3 goals. Don't be someone's test case. We looked at some platforms where, 3/4 of what we needed, they'd done before and had a track record, but there was one piece where, oh, we're working on it and it'll be ready for your event in November. And we were like, no, we've been down that path before with other things, and this is too big of an event. And then lastly, just customer service, customer service, customer service. Our strategic partnerships team and our exhibits staff really just stepped up. We did a lot of one-on-one with exhibitors and sponsors. We did a lot of training with any of our volunteers that were going to be monitoring chats or doing things at sessions or moderating some of the networking sessions, and just making sure that everybody was comfortable and ready to go. And then during the event, being able to respond to those last minute things was really, really important. And, again, DJG was like, what were the things that you didn't see coming? And I think for us, it was, how much members loved that awards hall. And, I've long wanted to get away from these banquets where it's like, nobody really wants to be at a 3-hour banquet. They're either there because their employer's making them be there, or they're receiving one of the awards. And so the success of this, I think, we're really rethinking how do we acknowledge our award recipients. And so I loved that this was such a big hit with them. Future events, I think we're thinking hybrid, at least for the foreseeable future. Certainly that helps grow the audience. You saw we grew participation this year with virtual. Outside the US, we were able to grow participation. And I think just folks that, can't take time off from school or can't take time off from work, or, can't afford travel. This is a way that, we're really able to expand our reach. I think it's something that, but until you experience it, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. I don't think face-to-face is going to go away. We're already seeing members kind of hungry for being able to get back together and see each other. But I think that looking at hybrid, which I said is, now the new thing that's keeping me up at night. But I think overall, when we look at our metrics from a budget perspective, from an attendance perspective, and certainly the attendee experience, we would say it was successful. So thanks.
Thank you, Karen. That was great. Thorough presentation. Appreciate all the insights. So at this time, the floor is open to any questions you may have for Karen about her event, or if you want to put them in the chat function, that's fine too. So go ahead and open it up for questions.
We have two questions in chat. One from Brian. He's asking, how successful was your enterprise pilot program?
It was really successful. So, and I don't know if Jen Scott is still on, if she can give a total number of organizations that participated, but certainly from a revenue standpoint, and helping to grow attendance, it was really successful. And one of the things that was really great is that for a number of organizations that participated with the enterprise registration, a number of their executives participated and were like, wow, we had no idea. This content is great. And, we definitely need to stay involved. And they were probably executives that we would have never gotten to the event face to face. And now, we'll be champions for SWE within their organizations.
Thom Duncan is asking what was your pricing strategy compared to your in-person conference?
So I would say we were probably about 75 to 80% of what we would have charged for a face-to-face event was our registration fee for individuals. We have a collegiate rate and a professional rate. And so it was not exactly the same, but it was fairly close. And we said, you're going to have access for a year. And, so we felt, and the amount of content was there. And it was, again, we really didn't get pushback on pricing at all.
Tiffany Melton from Spargo is asking, who is the virtual producer you worked with? I believe we just did a podcast on that, didn't we, Drew? With Chris?
Yep, we did. Chris Sherrick, Karen, if you want to speak to him, he worked with Shepherd, and he's done a lot of show production. But for me, speaking as the person who brought him in, having someone who knows show production, like Karen mentioned, sort of being able to envision a digital show and treating it like a show, was great. He's worked with TEDx and a few other groups. He kind of led scripting. He kind of worked directly with SWE and kind of collaborated with marketing on, how's the visual presentation going to come along. But he was pretty much focused exclusively on making the production itself be the best it could. I thought it was a smart move for SWE to bring him in.
Yeah, and he was on site when we did all the pre-recordings with our president and the MC, and so if we would go through something and she would say that doesn't sound like me, or that's not quite the right intent, we would make the change right there. And so it was great to be able to kind of respond to things as we were doing it.
Drew, can you post his contact info in the chat? Or make an introduction to Tiffany? We may have some other folks too. Another question is from Rich Waters. Do you have to use a separate registration system, or was it built into your virtual tech platform?
So we did use a separate registration system up until just a few days before we went live, and then we went to the platform. So we kind of uploaded everything from our system to them, and then once we got to sort of that, I think about the weekend before, then we used the system within the platform.
And Brian asked a follow-up. Was the enterprise pricing a flat rate or bulk discount?
It was so we had two. We had kind of a bulk and then an enterprise wide, and yeah, it was at a discount. I would say a pretty significant discount, but again, we really wanted to make sure we had the attendance.
Okay, I think we've handled all the chat questions. If anybody has a live question, we'll take those now, and then we'll move on.
I do think there's one more question about the frequency of posting conference. How frequently is your post-conference content accessed? 1 month, 3 months, 9 months later? That's from Rich Waters at ABMS.
Yeah, so we're providing access for a year. I don't have any stats on, you know, how much usage we're seeing, but I could certainly get that and share with the group. And we're continuing to promote it. So like actually this month, we're promoting it with a discount, you know, since people aren't going to be able to take advantage of the chat and kind of the live interaction, but the content is still there. And then, yeah, so we're continuing to sell it.
Excellent. Do we have any live questions? All right. Well, Karen, again, thank you so much for doing this. There's some really good chat going back and forth in the chat, and we'll share that post-recording as well with the recording. At this point, I'm going to now welcome Thom Duncan, who's the Director of Integrated Marketing at the American Board of Medical Specialties, and his colleague, Laima, and they're going to talk about some of the event activity they've had over at ABMS. Thom, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I'm joining here with Laima, and we just want to say, Karen, that's a terrific presentation you just did across the full range of suite. It's really quite an achievement in such a short time. We're going to dive in a little bit more on the back end, you know, what we call the sausage factory. And although our event was much smaller, we faced the same challenges that Karen's team did. Laima.
So I'm going to just give you a quick overview of our conference. Our conference is for healthcare professionals who have an interest in physician board certification. Our in-person conference was scheduled to take place in September, and usually we generate about 500 attendees for that event. And our attendance has increased annually. And I would say about 3 years ago, we were at about 300 some, and now our in-person has increased to over 500. So at one point, we had to make the strategic decision to go virtual. So even as late as March, April, and even May, we were looking at several different types of ways to execute our conference. You know, we were thinking, well, maybe we'll be able to do our in-person conference. Maybe we'll have to do some sort of a hybrid. Maybe we'll have to do virtual, or maybe we just won't do one this year. So, you know, a lot of things go into decisions like that. And one was, you know, we had a contract with a venue in Indianapolis for those dates. And, you know, in uncertain times, it became a very interesting path to have to go down. So once we knew that something was going to be different, we kind of went down 3 paths. We went through content development. Of course, our meetings people had to deal with the contracts for the in-person And then we had to look at various platforms and formats for a virtual meeting. So once we did make that strategic decision to go virtual, we had to figure out what had to be done. We had to redesign the format. We had to refocus the programming. We had to identify a virtual conference platform, and then we had to execute. And all this had to be done in a matter of weeks. So we learned quickly that we didn't want to simply replicate the in-person experience. And we decided, and similar to what Karen said, we decided early on that we were going to have focused and targeted content. We were going to have 2 days versus 3 days. We were not going to do an exhibit hall, but in place we were going to invite those potential exhibitors to be sponsors. And we put together a pretty robust sponsorship package. And we really narrowly focused our content. So, so we really had to rethink the entire program. We still wanted our programming to feel like our annual conference. We wanted to have an opening plenary session. We wanted to have a closing plenary session. We wanted thought-provoking and leading-edge presenters in those areas, just so that the virtual experience could still be exciting. And, you know, we didn't want to have a bunch of talking heads up there, because we saw that, you know, people usually tune out those talking heads. So we really wanted to have less content, but we really wanted it to be focused. And we wanted to have a Q&A in every single segment, just to have that attendee participation and engagement. And, you know, and I'm sure every conference is like this, you know, people come to the conferences to have the ability to network and see what their peers are doing. So we decided to do something called a networking lounge that was going to be open an hour before the session started and a half hour after sessions closed. And it was open the entire time. People can drop in there. It was staffed by 2 very energetic people, Sheila Fitzpatrick, who happens to be on this call, and Nicole Heller, who probably is on this call as well. And they were able to not only engage folks in conversation, but they were also able to serve as a concierge and help people navigate the platform. And we also did a virtual happy hour, which turned out to be really cool. So that's kind of an overview of what our conference was. The good thing was that we had a pretty strong marketing strategy in place already. So when we had to pivot to the virtual conference, it was easy for us to just plug right in there. And I'm going to turn it over to Thom so he can really show you the sausage factory from behind the scenes.
Thanks, Laima. So one thing we figured out pretty quickly was the platform doesn't need to be fancy, it just needs to work. And that was the kind of the guiding principle we used going in, that we wanted to deliver a great experience without making it really complicated or even a very expensive solution. So we were already established in Cvent, and we use Cvent for registration, for abstract and presenter management, and the mobile app, which we've used in prior conferences and have gotten rave reviews. We get a really high adoption rate of the mobile app of more than 90%, which is really high. It turns out that the mobile app also has, for those people who use Palm Pilots or other kind of devices that aren't very popular, they have a web version of the mobile app. And so what you're seeing here on screen is actually the mobile app in the web version. So we didn't push people to use the mobile app this year. We simply pushed them to the URL for the mobile app. And that's where they can get sponsor advertising, sponsor pages, the schedule, highlights of individual sponsors, speaker bios, and they can also see both their the all session schedule, so they can see anything that's in the platform and find links to any session that they wanted to go to. But they also had my schedule, so they could see exactly what they had signed up for, what they had registered for. So that worked really well. And we use Zoom as our platform. And so in each instance, people would come to this web page. We told them beforehand, keep this web browser up. They logged into it, so only registered attendees could get there. And then each session had, right now it's a session recording. This is where we put the recordings of the sessions after the event, but during the event where it says session recording, that was join virtual session. So for each session, they would click here, go to Zoom. When the Zoom session finished, they would come back here. And one reason we did that, rather than having concurrent sessions, is one, we were shifting for the plenary or the keynote sessions, we were using Zoom webinars. And for the smaller group sessions, which we ran concurrently, we were using Zoom meetings. And so this allowed us to switch back and forth, and it allowed us to have concurrent meetings instead of having people to stay in one meeting all day long. And we were a little concerned, frankly, going into it, if people would like that session, that feeling of having to go back and forth, back to the platform to get their next link or not. And one word we heard a few times in the responses was seamless. People thought the experience was seamless, and we got really great reviews for the experience. So again, it was not an expensive solution versus some of these platforms that integrate all of that into one, which can cost $60,000 or more. We were a fraction of that for our costs. This is very much the sausage factory, and I hope it doesn't blind you looking at this, but this is what we did on the back end. We realized one thing we heard early on was that you need more people supporting the session than you might think, and that since we had concurrent sessions, we had to have multiple teams. So what you're seeing here across the top are different roles that we had with our tech team. So there were about 6 to 8 people on each call, in each session. And then when we had multiple sessions, which you can see in the 12:30 slot, then we had 3 teams. So we had 18 or 20 people active at various times during the day. So that was a lot of training we needed to do. We put in about 60 hours of training time on calls with our tech team and with presenters. So now we did a conference just this past Friday, a symposium on Friday. And when we did the presenter training, everybody's like, oh, I've been doing this, I've done hours and hours of this, I lead these every week. So people are very comfortable now. But even in September, we didn't find, and leading up to September, we found that people weren't as comfortable yet. So we found that training time was really valued. People really appreciated it. And I'm not going to go into detail about what this sausage factory screen is, but just briefly, I'll say that we hired a Zoom consultant. You can get an 8-hour block for a Zoom consultant. This is a Zoom employee for $250 an hour. It's an 8-hour block you purchase. That proved really valuable because if something goes wrong in a big way, that's the only person who's on the back end of Zoom. He or she can get into all the sessions and troubleshoot live. And even if there's a big issue, like the Zoom server goes down, so you get one of those notices, Zoom is out, this person can switch you over to a different server right away, so we don't lose the whole conference. So that was really valuable. Karen mentioned having backup resources, and that was a critical backup resource for us, and we thought it was really well worth the money. Fortunately, the servers didn't go down, but if it had, we would have been sorry we hadn't gotten that. We had also 2 people dedicated to tech responders. And this allowed us, even though there were 2 people, they could be watching the chat saying, you know, I can't hear the speaker, something like that. We had scripted answers ready to respond. It turns out that Zoom gets almost no technical issues. And if there is a technical issue for an individual, the advice is usually restart your Zoom or restart your computer. So that turned out to be not necessary to have 2 people, but it meant we had redundancy so that one of those people could flip over to fill another role if necessary. We had a session producer. Laima led that team. It was excellent. We had MCs to do a little warm up before the event started. We had a person dedicated to running screen share. So we shared all of the PowerPoints. And then we had another person who was monitoring the chat or the Q&A for questions to feed to the moderator. And then we also had a green room greeter who worked with the presenters before the session started to make sure that they had everything. And all that was in place in case the whole thing went kablooey. So lessons learned. We needed to be flexible like Gumby. Laima?
You have to set your goals and priorities early on and stick to them. And do your research. We experienced every single platform available to mankind between March and June, just so that we could see how they worked. And similar to what Karen said, we really had to find one that would really work within the assets that we already had, Cvent, and one that would deliver the experience that we wanted our attendees to have.
Yeah, we learned glitches will happen, so plan contingencies and rehearse. We all had, our entire tech team had mobile hotspots that ABMS sent out to us so that we could, in case our internet went down, we had a backup there. And finally, I want to say this event took a team. You know, it was not by any means Laima and me. We're just the tip of the iceberg. We represented the virtual experience and tech team, but there are a lot more people, several of whom were on this call, who had a major lift in other areas and in the virtual experience. I just, you know, there was a lot of back-end support, and we're just, as I say, representing one small bit. So we're open to any questions you might have. Here's some feedback we heard after the event. If the question isn't appropriate for Laima and me, we'll see if we can call on one of our colleagues.
Okay, so the floor is open for questions.
Yeah, this is a question. This is Chris. Something that I've been curious about for all meeting planners who've had virtual meetings. Have you seen a consistent engagement or attendance as the conference weighs on? You know, like from Thursday to Saturday. Do you see a drop off in attendance or interest? I'm curious about the average meeting attendees' tolerance for 2 or 3 days of virtual content and what you guys are experiencing in terms of anything that's measurable.
So I'll answer that for us, and there may be other people who've had conferences who want to jump in on that as well. We had about, I think it was 80% of the people who registered attended. We had a registration fee, $159 for the day. It was about a day and a half, a long day and a half for our event. Normally we've had about 500 people attend our sessions, our event. We had 800 register, and 700, so more than 80%. So we had, I think, 780 or 770 people actually attended. Now, we know I think not a single session had more than about 700, if I recall, people in it. You know, the plenaries, and they definitely, Chris, did fall off throughout the day and both days, but we still ended up with a very strong presence even toward the end of the second day. we were very, very happy with that participation.
I would say similar for us. I mean, the morning keynotes definitely had the stronger attendance, but I think even the one keynote on a Saturday afternoon, we had over 500 people live. So, but that's kind of normal for us. Even our Saturday afternoon sessions when we're face-to-face tend to get pretty strong attendance. So I think it was pretty strong throughout.
Laima and Thom, did you see the question from Brian about your attendance results compared to your in-person meetings?
Yeah, Thom mentioned it a little bit. Typically, you know, our goal this year or in 2020 for the in-person was going to be 530. And for the virtual, we got over 800. And we were thrilled because we were able to open up that experience to attendees who might not normally be able to travel to an in-person event. So we're hoping that kind of commitment and engagement will, you know, whatever meetings looks like in the future, these people now have been exposed to our conference, and we're thrilled.
Thom or Laima, we have a number of folks on this call who are also in the medical space. Is there anything particular there in terms of the attendee type that you learned or maybe would change you to reach out or market to them in a little different way for this type of event?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer that directly, and Rich Waters may want to jump on and add to that, or Laima may want to add to that. But we recognize that this is an opportunity to reach people who normally wouldn't attend, whether they don't have the time or the financial resources, they don't want to travel. So we definitely did expand our audience in some key areas of audiences that we wanted to attract. And I think Karen was saying the same thing, is that we hope that those will convert, whether we're doing hybrids or in person in the future, certainly virtual. We hope that those will become more dedicated so that in the future, we've got a much broader audience. And we do try to focus our marketing to different audiences. So, you know, we have a large roster of sessions, and depending on what kind of audience, if we know what audience they're in, we'll send messages highlighting certain sessions to those people. So we'll be doing more of that. And as we think about our 2021 conference, we'll also look at the session content that's being discussed today, in fact, about what kind of content we might want to start adding or seeking for the program. Laima, did you have more to add?
Thom, this is Rich Waters. I'll just jump in. Very specifically for us also, we were able to attract physicians that normally would not be able to take 3 days out of their busy schedule, but they could participate either in a couple hours or the whole day and a half, but they didn't have to travel. They, you know, could pop in and out. So it afforded us the opportunity to really reach into that audience that's been a hard audience for us to generate attendance from. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. We have one question. What was your engagement post-meeting, or what has your engagement post-meeting been with on-demand content?
So we post that, as you saw, on each session, and we're in single digits or low double digits of anybody clicking through to those videos. We don't charge for them. And we had heard that before too, is we don't offer continuing education credits for our sessions. So it's maybe less incentive than some might have. But I could tell when one of our writers was looking at some of the video sessions, because those numbers tended to go up much higher. So we found very little engagement with those. And to be honest, we didn't push that engagement much. We felt like the live experience was really what we were most focused on.
Well, with that, unless anyone else has another question for Thom or Laima, thank you for your presentation. It was great to hear from you too. Appreciate your time. Speaking of time, we're about 7 minutes out from the hour. I will do this quick exercise. If you have to jump off because of other engagements, totally cool. We understand it. We will share it afterward. But if you can stay on, I just wanted to take a few moments and take advantage of the opportunity that we have about 30 people on the call here to look at what you guys are thinking, what's on your mind for the year for 2021. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a little whiteboard tool here. And this will just be sort of on the fly. What I would say is if you want to either put in chat or just throw out your thought. But what is maybe one concern or one consideration as you head into the new year that's kind of on your mind is important for your organization, whether it's an event related thing or membership or employee, whatever it might be. Let's share it, and then we can talk through some ideas and go from there. So the floor is open, and love to get some input. So to prime the pump a little bit, looking at how 2020 has shaped up and how events have been impacted or whatnot, from a budgetary thought or concern, what might be on your minds in terms of how you prepare for next year, or what type of programming or how you may shift program? Any thoughts there? Sounds like a no. Sorry, go ahead.
There's some answers in chat, Ron.
Okay, can you throw those out, Chris?
Can I?
I don't know if you wanted us to speak or. I didn't know if you wanted us to speak or to type, but.
Speaker type.
Okay. So I know for us, one of the exercises we went through at SLAS is to come up with a way to engage with our members at least once a month. And we already have quite a few activities that we do, but we came up with something that would really keep us in front of people just in case we wouldn't get back to face-to-face, or if we had to cancel more events or things like that. So we have our main conference in January. So last year we were lucky enough to have that conference, but this year it'll be virtual. We have a symposia in Berlin in April, that we are hoping will be in person, even if it's a very small regional group of 25, 50, 75. We're going to obviously see how that goes. Otherwise, that'll pivot to virtual and or hybrid. We have a European conference, which is about 1,000 people planned for Vienna at the end of June. We're keeping our fingers crossed that is hybrid. Well, right now we're planning for hybrid. We're hoping that by June we will actually be in person and can still keep it hybrid, because we know not everybody will be traveling. And then we have other symposia in the fall. But in between that, we've created a number of other things like monthly member meetups on Zoom. We've created basically an entire year's calendar of contingency plans that will keep us engaged and giving us new ways to connect with our members and give them new things to look forward to and participate in. But that's been our tactic for kind of planning for 2021.
And how are you promoting these meetups and these other options, Jill? How are you kind of getting the word out?
All of our regular channels, email, social media a lot, but we've also been kind of doubling down on our strategic alliance organizations and creating more alliances with organizations. So we've been partnering with organizations in Europe and Asia and elsewhere to spread the word about things that we're doing. we do have about a quarter or a third of our membership is in Europe. So we've also been trying to engage the people there to create some of these meetups, so that some of our meetups are usually around noon time and Central Time. We planned a European-based meetup that's a little bit differently timed, but also it's on a topic that's very European focused, European policy focused. So it has a little bit more. The content is a little more directed at them. But yeah, we're kind of calling in all the channels that we can, and trying to get our partners and our sponsors to do some of that marketing as well.
Excellent, thank you. From the chat, Karen of SWE asks, how quickly will people return to face-to-face events?
Vaccine, vaccine, vaccine.
We have heard from international clients that some meetings in, for instance, Singapore and China are moving forward in person, with obviously limitations on attendees, but that's certainly a promising sign. We created a poll actually back in November, and we plan to reopen it every 2 months or so leading up to our European conference, that asks them what their comfort level and expectation level is to attend our European conference based on a couple of different factors. So one of the contingencies is, if there is a widespread vaccine in use, would you attend a conference in person? If there's not a vaccine, but there are lots of other safety measures like testing, rapid testing at airports and rapid testing at venues, et cetera, then would you attend the conference in person or online or neither? So we have been we did it in November. We're going to do it again in January. We're going to do it again in March, kind of all leading up to various points in our where we have obviously have those dates when you have to cancel or create a hybrid or do whatever, or create virtual or whatever it is we're going to do. So we're going to keep polling and see how those trends change. But I thought, I'm sorry, I think it's Karen at SWE was also doing some polling questions, and I thought that was interesting to just kind of see what people knew about the conference and how you were to inform your marketing. That's very smart.
Thank you for sharing that, Joe. Yeah, I think constantly engaging and communicating with your audience and your members is helpful for them in terms of knowing where your heads are, but also obviously for you guys for gaining intelligence and making decisions that are challenged to make. So I think that's a great tool for anybody, regardless of if it's event-based or any type of initiative or program you might be thinking about in 2021. Jen Scott of SWE asked, if anyone to the floor, how do you serve both attendees who want in-person and those that will only move forward with virtual once we are back to in-person? That's a great idea or a great question. Has anyone thought about this? How do you kind of, the doors are open, the horses are out, can you get them back to come to the barn, or some in the pasture and some in the barn? That was a horrible metaphor, I apologize, but any thoughts out there on what that might look like from anybody? So it probably comes down to value statements and then how you approach it. But we do see that a number of you guys are thinking hybrid. So that seems to be something that prior to this pandemic, I know from our standpoint, from DJG standpoint, clients have talked about and considered. I think this pandemic has proved, it's a positive, that hybrid events do work and do offer opportunities to answer and serve these questions that were here. Let's see here. I think that's about it, and we're kind of running up against time. Any other thoughts or parting questions before we end this session? Chris, I don't think we see anything in chat, so I think we're good there.
Yep.
So there you go. It's 11:03, 3 minutes over, not too bad. Thank you again so much for joining us today, and of course, thank you from DJG standpoint for your ongoing partnership. We appreciate it, and we all look forward to a good 2021. There's lots of things to be positive about, and have a great holiday, and we'll see you all on the other side. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. This is great.